Hello, welcome to Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and in this video, we're going to talk about the new minis that are going to be released for the launch box for 4th edition Age of Sigmar. Now, I know this is about to be a conversation about Stormcast, and you're going to say to yourself, Rob, A, the Stormcast that they've showed off is uninspiring, and also, how can you remotely make Stormcast or the conversation about Stormcast interesting? Well, stick around. Stick around. Let's find out together. Thank you to the Twitch chat for joining me live. And also thank you to everyone on the Honest Wargamer Patreon who helps support the show. So what the hell am I talking about? The first mini out of the box. So there will be a launch box for Age of Sigmar. They'll never call it a starter box. 4th edition Age of Sigmar, they'll call it a launch box. And that launch box is going to contain Skaven versus Stormcast. Now, if you go back and watch my predictions from the beginning of 2024, I did say that we would see Slimcast, so thinner, Age of Sigmar 1 minis, translated into the launch box. And it looks like my prediction is right, so it's pretty good, versus Skaven. We've already seen some Skaven sprues. However, and sadly, they didn't lead off with a Skaven sculpt. We haven't seen an awesome new Skaven, like, wizard with, you know, all this crazy stuff coming off them, or a war machine. And instead, we've led off with a Stormcast. And I've got some thoughts on Stormcast, and stick with me. I'd like to know straight off the bat what your thoughts about Stormcast are. But let's go and have a look at this, and I'll talk about what I think about it after. Liberators have been reforged. So Liberators were miniatures that came out at the start of Age of Sigmar. The Age of Sigmar 1 launch box or starter box contained Liberators. Famous, big, gold, big blue shield, very chunky. And I think many people at the time said Games Workshop are just trying to create the fantasy version of Space Marines. Probably true. Probably true. Space Marines are really popular. People love Space Marines. That's probably what they were trying to do. I think that's a fair thing. However, they've released a new Liberator. Here you can see the picture at the bottom. On the left-hand side is the old Liberator, nearly 10 years old now, and design-wise probably 12 years old. In the center is the updated Liberator, and on the right-hand side is the Stormcast Eternals that we got released in Age of Sigmar 3. As you can see, they've updated them for a modern age. Slimmer, more svelte, more potent. And honestly, as the chat pointed out, it reminds us a lot of this Lisa Simpson sketch from The Simpsons.
Wait, don't be fooled. She's just a regular Malibu Stacy with a stupid cheap hat. She still embodies all the awful stereotypes she did before.
But she's got a new hat.
So, exactly. And if you did want to go pick up just some Liberator hammers on eBay, they're available for you to go pick them up. And then you can stick them on all the unsold Vindicators that are knocking around all over the internet, because there are loads of them, because the Dominion box didn't sell super well. I'd like to just put a point in here before anyone gets a little bit like, Age of Sigmar is dying, Age of Sigmar isn't doing well. It's absolutely not true. Event attendance and generally Age of Sigmar player base has increased by nearly 70% across Age of Sigmar 3. And that didn't all happen in the beginning of Age of Sigmar 3. It happened mid-Age of Sigmar 3. So in the middle of the game system, you had at one point, over a year, 50% increase in event attendance and unique players. That means tons and tons of new people playing Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar is the biggest it's ever been, and as I've covered it since the beginning of Age of Sigmar, since day one, it's huge. Way, way bigger than we've ever seen it. Now, are Stormcast Eternals a reason that it's popular, or are Stormcast Eternals a reason it's not popular? I guess this is a time for you to let me know. I'm going to let you know right now that I think Stormcast Eternals, as they were, and even as they are very, very mid. I'm not saying they're bad. I just think that they're very mid. But they're really good for new players. Let's talk about why. As you can see with the new Stormcast, you can just spray them silver, pick out some edge detail, and you'll have that mini done pretty quick. That's brilliant for new players, and for a faction to be a new faction like you see with Space Marines. Having just a big dude that's also an elite army, normally they're elite, so you don't have as many. Normally where you would buy 10 of a type of unit, you would only pick up 5 of an equivalent Stormcast unit. So you don't even have to paint as much. So they provide, with the starting army and also the poster army, an army that's quick to paint, an army that's easy to paint, and you don't have to paint a lot of models. That is a massive positive that they have going for them. However, it's boring. I'm just going to put that out there. Stormcast are just pretty mid. Are there Stormcast ranges that I like? 100%. I've showcased some here. Vanquishers are pretty cool. I quite like these. But again, very simple, very little armor placed on them. Vigilers are also rad. They look great. I think they've got lots going for them here as well. These look really, really nice. I just think these are very cool minis. And in their special characters section, you got Bastion Karthlos, which is great, although again, very little detail. Lots of negative space for good painters, I guess. And then even like things like the Knight Relictor and some of the most recent releases like Black Talons and all of those have got some really fun, engaging Stormcast minis, which I think are really cool. Even going back 2 generations. So this is actually going back. This is going back. This is not Age of Sigmar 3. This is Age of Sigmar 2. And even then, I think the Stormcast Eternals on Dracolines were wicked because I think the Dracolines were really cool. And then Age of Sigmar 3 gave us loads of great dragons and Stormcast on dragons. And I would argue, though, that the Stormcast on the dragon was the weakest part of the dragon. If you'd have put anything else on the dragon, it would have been just as fine. So the Stormcast part really wasn't the selling point, in my opinion. Now, I know there's going to be lots of people who watch this who are like, Rob, I'm a Stormcast fan. Let me know why you like Stormcast, which part about Stormcast you like. You like collecting them and building them. I think they're really mid. And I'll continue to say that they're really mid. I prefer things like the Free Guild Steel Helms. I think these look really good. I've said many times I think that Cities of Sigmar should be the poster children of the game. And someone in the chat brought up an amazing point, which I think is really worth saying. And that is that if you did have the Steel Helms as your kind of introductory faction, then it would make the oddness of Stormcast Eternals or the exotic nature of Stormcast Eternals more impactful. If you have a more, simple baseline, then you have a more exotic Stormcast Eternal. The problem with Stormcast Eternals is they're pitched as the standard. They are these superhumans reforged in heaven a million times, and given the power of a lightning god. But on the table, but then because you're so, they are the standard soldier that you see, everything else seems exotic compared to them. And I think that doesn't help them in their blandness and midness, in my opinion, of course, not as a statement. I think they look really good. And if we compare them to things like the old world, where we have these Bretonian men on foot, again, we get a lot more character and we get a lot more detail and a lot more, there's a lot more story told in the miniature. Now, I would say that again, and I've talked about it already, but I'm going to reinforce this point. One of the issues that a lot of people have with minis like this and minis like Steel Helms is there's too much detail. They're like, there's too much detail, it takes too long to paint. And I do think providing an option, Games Workshop provide an option where there are armies that are easier to paint or easier to put on the tabletop is a bonus. But I wouldn't advocate for each one of the ranges having less detail. Same way I would not necessarily advocate for rules being any simpler, mainly because Warhammer is hard. I do not want a stick figure that's got zero detail on, that is literally just a flat surface up and down, which Stormcast almost are, that have almost no rules, and it's a game that I play for 15 minutes. Because that's not the Warhammer that I have grown to love over the years. The Warhammer I've grown to love is unfortunately very difficult, and I think that there are ways Games Workshop should try to tackle that. And there is a high ceiling. A good example of rules versus miniatures is that I have never really been a particularly good painter, and so when I see complex models, I don't overly want to paint them, and therefore I normally shy away from them. And I'm sure many people feel that same way about rules. I don't want complex rules. I'm going to shy away from it. But ultimately, whether or not the miniatures are difficult to paint or the rules are difficult to play, eventually you have to commit, because Wargaming is generally very, very hard. Painting a mini is legitimately tough. I will go to bat for anyone in the chat who thinks that. So I think providing a simpler Liberator and a simpler Stormcast Eternal is a massive positive to that barrier to entry that we see from people being uncomfortable about getting into Age of Sigmar. I think to kind of round it off, The new Liberator is just the same as the other Liberator, which is honestly pretty embarrassing as the first mini to show off for a new edition. I would try and wow people with something much more big and grandiose and, try to make people excited. But as we've seen with all the marketing from the Age of Sigmar 4 stuff, they've been very focused on trying to make people who are new translate or transfer into Age of Sigmar. And so pitching something that's easy to paint, simple to do, and you don't need many of them while being fairly bland is actually a really big positive. But for existing players or players maybe that are more keen to get more detail, more nuance, something a little bit more flashy in the game, Age of Sigmar is the best game for that. Age of Sigmar has got literally tree men and giant bugs. It's got massive winged demons. It's got, skyboats full of weird, odd dwarfs. It's really got so much more evocative and exotic stuff over the Stormcast. The Stormcast almost have to be boring. Stormcast have to be this mid, uninteresting, uninspiring kind of place because the rest of the setting is wild. The rest of the setting has got the most crazy stuff happening inside of it. And so this is good. This gives new players an opportunity to kind of like cut their teeth on something that's simple and easy to do, especially if you're new into the hobby and you haven't painted stuff before and you haven't played stuff before. And then there's loads of other armies out there where you can go and really express yourself more creatively in the future, which I think is good. I just think my TLDR, I wouldn't have led my review, I wouldn't have led my launch of a new edition with this mini. I don't think this is really, really inspiring anyone, but also it isn't ever putting anyone off. There's people who are generally put off by more complex minis or bigger minis or minis. If they'd have led off with Skaven, would more people have been put off? This at least feels safe. This is what I would describe this as, safe. And it's another problem I probably have with this release is that it's safe because Age of Sigmar has never been safe. From the priority roll to blowing up an old edition to having vampires which are half centaur, half bat. Age of Sigmar has rarely played particularly safe as a game and a setting. And so this to me strikes of a company that doesn't believe in itself and doesn't believe in its setting, which I think is interesting. Let me know what you think about this mini. Let me know what you think about Stormcast. Let me know about what other things you've thought about in this video. And chat has already let me know a lot about what they think as well. It's been a good conversation. We live stream every Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. UK time. And we have a really active Discord community where we talk about Age of Sigmar and loads of other stuff, which you can access via our Patreon. So you should join up, hang out with us, and talk about these things. Thanks for listening, and appreciate you watching my videos. It's wicked to get the support.